Previously, Qing Mao Mountain fell into chaos as First Gen Gu Yue and Lord Sky Crane unleashed their centuries-old hatred. Now Bai Ning Bing's final power freezes the entire mountain, while Fang Yuan searches desperately for one last path to survival. Let us continue with Reverend Insanity, Episode 24. Years ago, Lord Sky Crane had made his name with a rank 5 crane enslavement Gu, using it to control a crane king at the myriad beast king level. Power of that magnitude was enough for a single man to wipe out an entire clan stronghold. Lord Sky Crane and First Gen Gu Yue had both been disciples of the Immortal Crane Sect in Central Continent. Several hundred years ago, they had been fellow disciples brothers, under the same master, and their relationship had been extremely close. They fought demonic path Gu masters side by side, their coordination nearly flawless. During one pursuit of a demonic Gu master, the two of them discovered an inheritance. It was one of the countless inheritances arranged by Blood Sea Ancestor. If it had been an ordinary inheritance, perhaps nothing would have happened. It certainly would not have been enough to turn two close martial brothers into mortal enemies. But the treasures hidden inside were simply too valuable. They held the possibility of letting a mortal transcend the ordinary world and ascend toward immortality. Even the closest of brothers could not remain unmoved before such temptation. Legend said that Blood Sea Ancestor had left behind hundreds of thousands of inheritances, yet only a handful contained his true treasures. Those treasures were his signature Gu worms, the core methods that had made him terrifying. The inheritance the two brothers had stumbled upon was one of Blood Sea Ancestor's genuine inheritances. Lord Sky Crane moved first and seized it. Blinded by greed, First Gen Gu Yue launched a secret attack, intending to kill Lord Sky Crane and take everything for himself. But the assassination failed and Lord Sky Crane escaped. Once the matter was exposed, First Gen Gu Yue had no choice but to disappear. He fled from place to place, hiding his identity while guarding against pursuit from his sect. Decades passed, yet he never managed to obtain a lifespan Gu. Unable to escape old age, he eventually came to Qing Mao Mountain in southern border. There he changed his appearance, took the surname Gu Yue, and founded Gu Yue Village. Lord Sky Crane searched for him without success, his hatred only deepening with time. The Immortal Crane Sect itself was also deeply interested in Blood Sea's true inheritance. With the support of the sect, Lord Sky Crane finally resorted to a life-preserving jade burial Gu, sealing himself in slumber and preserving only a thread of life. Naturally, such a method was not orthodox. In principle, it was little different from First Gen Gu Yue turning himself into a zombie. Both were unorthodox methods used merely to cling to existence. Becoming a zombie meant using death to continue living in another form. The life-preserving jade burial Gu merely suspended one's life. It did not truly increase lifespan. In this world, there was only one genuine way to extend lifespan. Lifespan Gu, just as Fang Yuan had used in his previous life. That was the proper path. Every other method carried side effects and went against the natural order of heaven and earth. They were desperate measures, nothing more. Senior brother? You shameless, despicable bastard. When you betrayed me all those years ago, did you ever imagine this day would come? Ha 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 ha! Heaven does not disappoint those who persevere. I finally found you. Today, not only will I wipe out your bloodline and turn your 1,000 years of planning into nothing, I will also reclaim the opportunity that should have belonged to me. I have waited far too long for this day. Lord Sky Crane emerged from his memories and raised his head toward the heavens, murderous intent rolling from him. Yet before he could truly attack, First Gen Gu Yue moved first. The blood covering the ground suddenly surged like a raging current. A crimson tide rose with overwhelming momentum. The thick stench of blood rushed into everyone's faces. From within the bloody water, thousands upon thousands of blood drop Gu shot into the air, buzzing densely like a living red cloud. Whoosh! 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 A thunderous beating of wings followed. Countless bladewing bloodbats soared into the sky, blotting out the heavens as they surrounded the crane flock overhead. The cranes immediately fell into chaos. Blood drop Gu and bladewing bloodbats were both far smaller than the iron beak flying cranes, giving them a tremendous advantage in aerial combat. Lord Sky Crane roared in fury and urged the Crane King beneath him forward, charging straight at First Gen Gu Yue. Retreat! A Gu master screamed. The wind howled. The charge of a myriad beast king carried a terrifying force, like a meteor crashing toward the earth. Merely witnessing it made people's hearts tremble. But suddenly, a wave of blood rose from below. The Blood River Python, hidden within the crimson tide, surged up to intercept the attack. Its huge jaws snapped around the Crane King's long neck while its body coiled around the great bird, trying to drag it down into the sea of blood. Lord Sky Crane gave a cold snort. He knew the Blood River Python well enough. Blood was an excellent restorative food for it, so he could not allow the creature to remain in contact with the Crimson Sea. At his thought, the Crane King extended its iron talons and clamped down hard on the Blood River Python. At the same time, its wings beat violently and carried both creatures into the sky. The Blood River Python had already fought a brutal battle with Tishua Lung. Its body was covered in wounds, and much of its strength had been depleted. Dragged upward by the Crane King, it was gradually carried away from the village. Die, Lord Sky Crane roared. His body transformed into a streak of white light as he shot toward First Gen Gu Yue inside the crimson coffin. First Gen Gu Yue stepped out of the coffin. With a sudden spread, two enormous wings opened behind him. They were powerful and pitch black, shaped like the wings of a bat. Zombie Gu were among the most famous and widely circulated Gu lineages in the world. Rank 2 Wandering Zombie Gu, Rank 3 Hairy Zombie Gu, Rank 4 Hopping Zombie Gu, Rank 5 Flying Zombie Gu. The Blood White was one branch of the Rank 5 Flying Zombie lineage, and naturally, it was extraordinarily powerful. First Gen Gu Yue's eyes burned as he looked toward the sky. His hands spread like vicious demonic claws. With one fierce beat of his wings, he rose into the air. Boom! The two Rank 5 experts collided in mid-air. Both were forced back, evenly matched. The instant they steadied themselves, they rushed at each other again. Boom! 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 They fought high above the village, their bodies crashing together again and again. The aftershocks of Rank 5 power rolled outward in waves, collapsing bamboo buildings below. After exchanging blows for a while, First Gen Gu Yue gave a roar. His body split into overlapping blood shadows, and the sharpness of his attacks multiplied several times over. Profound light flashed from Lord Sky Crane's eyes. His attacks cut through the blood shadows like flying blades, and thrust through them like immortal swords. First Gen Gu Yue spat out a cloud of blood mist. Lord Sky Crane immediately activated a Gu worm, forming a protective halo around himself that blocked the blood mist. The battle dragged on. Lord Sky Crane was already old, his body weakened by age. Gradually, First Gen Gu Yue's physical superiority began to show. Lord Sky Crane was suppressed step by step and slowly fell into a disadvantage. Several hundred years have passed, yet you still haven't improved at all. First Gen Gu Yue laughed loudly. You damned bastard! Lord Sky Crane cursed, furious beyond measure. He had never expected First Gen Gu Yue to become this fierce. Whether it was the Blood Drop Gu or the Bladewing Blood Bats, every one of them had once been part of the inheritance he had obtained. The thought only made his rage burn hotter. Time to use my trump card. Lord Sky Crane snorted inwardly. His snow-white eyebrows suddenly trembled. Then they began to grow. In an instant, the two brows stretched dozens of meters, slithering left and right like snakes leaving their dens. With terrifying speed, they wrapped tightly around First Gen Gu Yue. First Gen Gu Yue struggled and clawed at them. But the seemingly fragile white brows were tougher than refined steel wire. Once they wrapped around him, they were like the roots of an ancient tree. So it's the raise eyebrows and exhale Gu. For the first time, First Gen Gu Yue's voice changed. Shock and anger mixed together. This Gu did not expel ordinary air but primeval energy. It used the Gu Master's own primeval essence as the foundation to draw out and exhaust the opponent's primeval essence. Yet the Gu was rarely used because it harmed both sides. To kill 1,000 enemies, one might have to sacrifice 800 of one's own. By activating it now, Lord Sky Crane was not only draining First Gen Gu Yue's primeval essence, his own was being consumed as well. The long white brows became a bridge connecting the apertures of the two men, forcing both sides to expend primeval essence. Normally, this was a method used by a stronger Gu Master to bully a weaker one. If used against someone with greater cultivation, it was no different from seeking death. But this situation was different. Lord Sky Crane and First Gen Gu Yue were both rank 5 peak stage Gu Masters. However, First Gen Gu Yue had transformed into a zombie. His aperture was dead and could no longer recover primeval essence naturally. Lord Sky Crane might have been aged and nearing the end of his lifespan, but his aperture was still alive. His primeval essence could still recover on its own. The move struck directly at First Gen Gu Yue's fatal weakness. Lord Sky Crane's primeval essence continued to replenish itself little by little. First Gen Gu Yue's, however, only decreased with every use. First Gen Gu Yue desperately flew backward, but the white eyebrows stretched with him as though they had no end. Lord Sky Crane followed closely behind. With a roar, First Gen Gu Yue commanded Blood Drop Gu and Bladewing Blood Bats to slash at the white brows. It was useless. The white brows were astonishingly tough. Even when several strands were severed, they quickly joined together again. Primeval essence continued draining from First Gen Gu Yue's aperture. If this continued, his defeat was certain. He was a ruthless hero of his generation. Yet now he had been forced into a desperate situation. Grinding his teeth, he abruptly changed tactics. Instead of attacking the eyebrows, he ordered the Blood Drop Gu and Bladewing Blood Bats to swarm Lord Sky Crane himself. Lord Sky Crane had to divide his attention to maintain the raise eyebrows and exhale Gu. Facing the sky-filling attack, he could only pour power into his defensive halo and defend passively. The white halo shook violently, almost on the verge of collapsing. Lord Sky Crane's heart sank. At this rate, he might not drain First Gen Gu Yue's primeval essence before his own defense was shattered and he was killed first. Lord Sky Crane's face twisted viciously. Fury flashed through his eyes. Without warning, he attacked the Gu Masters below. A flock of arrow-feather birds rained down from the sky. The arrows were not aimed at First Gen Gu Yue. After transforming into a blood white, First Gen Gu Yue possessed terrifying physical defenses. Such attacks would have little effect on him. Instead, the arrow-feather birds plunged into the crowd. Countless Gu Masters were struck. Many died on the spot. At the same time, white light burst from Lord Sky Crane's eyes. 2 blazing beams swept across the village. Bamboo forests were shredded, streets split apart, and wherever the light struck a human body, flesh melted away like snow beneath the sun. When a rank 5 Gu Master truly attacked without restraint, casualties mounted in an instant. Screams of pain, cries of terror, and desperate shouts filled the village. One arrow feather bird shot toward Fang Yuan. Without hesitation, Fang Yuan grabbed the person beside him and threw him forward. The feather arrow pierced straight through the man's skull and became lodged there. Using the opening, Fang Yuan twisted aside and narrowly avoided the iron claws of an iron-beak flying crane. The difference between rank 3 and rank 5 was simply too great. There was almost no room to resist. Bai Ning was in much the same situation, constantly dodging through the chaos. Every time he was injured, the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique restored his body, but each restoration brought him another step closer to the final catastrophe of the 10 extreme physiques. Rank 5 Gu Masters already stood near the summit of the mortal world. "Stop!" First Gen Gu Yue roared. Looking down and seeing so many Gu Masters being slaughtered, his heart ached as though it were bleeding. He had founded the village and propagated his bloodline for far more than simply hiding his identity. He had a far greater scheme. The descendants of the clan were the fruits he had nurtured for hundreds of years. Now Lord Sky Crane was destroying that painstaking work right before his eyes. With no other choice, First Gen Gu Yue abandoned his pressure on Lord Sky Crane. The bladewing bloodbats and blood drop Gu abruptly changed direction and swooped down toward the village, trying to stop the massacre. Lord Sky Crane burst into laughter. Blood Sea's inheritance emphasized offense over defense. By turning back to protect the Gu Yue clansmen, First Gen Gu Yue was abandoning his greatest strength and forcing himself to fight where he was weakest. Lord Sky Crane understood his senior brother well. He knew exactly what First Gen Gu Yue was planning. That was why he had deliberately targeted the Gu Yue clansmen. The moment First Gen Gu Yue tried to save them, his attention became divided and his rhythm broke. Lord Sky Crane's dangerous situation was immediately relieved. "No!" Just as the two sides fell into a stalemate, First Gen Gu Yue suddenly shouted. Phantom iron chains appeared all across his body. In the blink of an eye, the illusions turned solid. Lengths of black iron chain coiled around First Gen Gu Yue like dragons and serpents, binding him tightly. At the same time, a yellow talisman slowly materialized and pasted itself directly onto his forehead. Thud! Bound by the chains, First Gen Gu Yue could no longer spread his wings. He lost the ability to remain in the air and crashed to the ground. The sudden turn of events stunned not only First Gen Gu Yue, but even Lord Sky Crane. Then Lord Sky Crane's expression twisted into wild delight. "So it's Demon Suppression Iron Chain Gu and the Draw Firewood from beneath the Cauldron Gu! Ha ha ha!" It seems that so-called Divine Investigator was not completely useless after all. "My dear senior brother, this time you are unquestionably dead." These two Gu worms were signature Gu of the Tai clan. Demon Suppression Iron Chain Gu could bind a Gu Master's movements, leaving the target unable to resist and vulnerable to slaughter. The other Gu could suppress and extract the Gu worms inside a Gu Master's body, sealing them before pulling them out one after another. Shui Lung had relied on these two Gu to capture countless demonic path Gu Masters alive. Now they had been planted on First Gen Gu Yue. What is happening? For the first time, genuine fear appeared in First Gen Gu Yue's eyes. His mind flashed back to the moment when he had killed Shui Lung. The green bronze mask had flown away, revealing a broad, square face. Even at the edge of death, Shui Lung had shown no fear. His weathered eyes had remained firm and unwavering. His blood-covered palm had lightly struck First Gen Gu Yue's chest. The blow had been so weak that First Gen Gu Yue had paid it no attention. So it was then First Gen Gu Yue finally understood. Damn it. If I still possessed a living body, I would have noticed immediately. But this zombie body, though powerful and extraordinarily durable, has dulled senses. He cursed inwardly. Transforming into a blood white had brought enormous power, but it also came with countless weaknesses. By the natural span of his life, First Gen Gu Yue should have died long ago. Defying heaven to prolong existence, how could there be no price? Ha 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 ha. Lord Sky Crane laughed wildly. His aura surged as he attacked once again. First Gen Gu Yue had no choice but to defend himself, and the disadvantage immediately became overwhelming. Demon Suppression Iron Chain Gu did more than bind his physical body. Phantom chains also appeared inside his aperture, attempting to suppress and completely seal it. The primeval sea churned like boiling water. Countless goo worms flew frantically through the aperture, resisting the suppressive force of the iron chains. As a result, First Gen Gu Yue's primeval essence began draining at a terrifying speed. Today you will lose. Die. Lord Sky Crane attacked faster and faster, blow after blow without pause, almost as if he had gone mad. First Gen Gu Yue was soon covered in wounds. Pale corpse bones showed through his chest, and both of his arms were severed by Lord Sky Crane. Just as Lord Sky Crane seemed on the verge of victory, First Gen Gu Yue suddenly opened his mouth and released a bizarre scream. Ah! The shrill sound wave exploded outward. Lord Sky Crane was struck head-on, as though smashed by an enormous hammer. He was hurled dozens of steps backward, his long white eyebrows pulled taut. Then he fell from the sky and crashed to the ground. He struggled upright. Blood seeped from the corners of his eyes, nostrils, ears, and mouth. The lingering vibration still churned violently through his body, sending his blood into chaos and leaving him unable to move for a short time. Many Gu masters saw an opportunity and attacked from afar with moonblades, water bullets, and other methods. Every attack was stopped by Lord Sky Crane's white defensive halo. More than a dozen flying cranes rushed First Gen Gu Yue like a swarm of hornets, but their iron beaks struck the Blood White's body as though hitting forged steel. The beaks snapped one after another. The defense of a rank 5 zombie was not something to underestimate. Even if Fang Yuan used the chainsaw golden centipede to saw at the Blood White's body, he might spend an entire hour without cutting through its flesh. At this moment, only the two rank 5 Gu masters on the battlefield were truly capable of threatening each other. Both looked miserable. But as long as their primeval essence remained, everyone else could do little more than watch helplessly. Lord Sky Crane temporarily lacked the strength to continue attacking. The Crane King was far away, still locked in combat with the Blood River Python, and Lord Sky Crane himself had just been shaken so badly that he was bleeding from every opening. So he widened his eyes, gathered his concentration, and poured everything into the raised eyebrows and exhale Gu, accelerating the drain on First Gen Gu Yue's primeval essence. That nearly took First Gen Gu Yue's ancient life on the spot. The level of his primeval sea fell rapidly. Once it was exhausted, his Gu worms would no longer have primeval essence to resist Demon Suppression Iron Chain Gu. The moment the chains completely suppressed his aperture, the extraction Gu on his forehead would activate, seal his Gu worms, and pull them out one by one. At that point, everything would be over. Panicked, First Gen Gu Yue shouted, "Quickly, grab the white eyebrows and pour in your primeval essence. Help me! Go help him! Support First Gen Ancestor! Everyone! Together!" A crowd of Gu masters rushed forward. They were not only from the Gu Yue clan, Gu masters from Bai clan and Xiong clan joined them as well. If even First Gen Gu Yue could not cut through the white eyebrows, then none of their own attacks had any hope of succeeding. They could only follow his instructions. One after another, hands reached out and grabbed the long white brows. The instant they touched them, strands separated from the brows and wrapped tightly around wrists and arms before spreading farther across each person's body. Ah! Screams erupted without pause. Rank 1 and Rank 2 Gu masters could never hope to compete in an endurance battle between Rank 5 experts. Their primeval essence was sucked dry almost immediately. Their primeval seas sank to the bottom, their apertures dried out, then cracked, and finally collapsed. The aperture was one of the most vital parts of the human body, even more important than the heart. The instant an aperture shattered, many Gu masters died where they stood. Damn it! First Gen Gu Yue cursed. The demon suppression iron chains tightened further, cutting into his flesh until pale bone showed underneath. In theory, Tai Shui Lung was already dead. Without a Gu master's primeval essence, demon suppression iron chain Gu should no longer have been able to activate. But the Gu had also been contaminated by a frenzy-type Gu, allowing it to absorb natural primeval energy from the air and sustain itself. More importantly, demon suppression iron chain Gu had belonged to Tai Shui Leng. His will remained within it, the unwavering intent to suppress and kill First Gen Gu Yue. First Gen Gu Yue's primeval essence was draining far too quickly. He was gradually losing the ability to resist. Seeing this, many of the Gu masters who had been running over to help began to slow down. "What are you afraid of?" Fang Yuan suddenly shouted. "If First Gen loses, we die too. Do you honestly expect that old man to spare us?" He rushed to First Gen Gu Yue's side and grabbed the white eyebrow without hesitation. The 1,000-li Earthwolf spider was already dead, while the enemy possessed flying cranes capable of pursuing anyone who fled. Escaping alone offered no hope at all. Helping First Gen Gu Yue, on the other hand, could force the two Rank 5 experts to continue fighting each other to the death. In the chaos, Fang Yuan might still find a chance to profit. The white eyebrow immediately locked around Fang Yuan's wrist. It crept up his arm like a rapidly growing vine, winding all the way to his waist. Inside his aperture, his snow-silver primeval essence began disappearing at frightening speed. Fang Yuan clenched his teeth and endured silently. His action had a powerful effect on the others. More masters rushed forward. Let's do it together. We may not necessarily die. That's right. There is strength in numbers. Sai, what choice do we have? We can only gamble our lives. Countless hands grabbed onto the white brows. Gu masters continued dying one after another, but each fallen person was replaced by another, who stepped forward and joined the struggle of primeval essence. Ha ha ha! To actually clash with a rank 5 Gu master. This is interesting. Bai Ning also came forward to help. Life or death, let's gamble on it once. Zhongzhao Man stepped forward as well. Fang Zheng, however, was nowhere to be seen. He had been separated from the others in the wilderness and never made it back to the village. Whether he was alive or dead was unknown, though the odds were against him. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Every breath became painfully long. As the struggle continued, Gu masters kept dying. Some attacked Lord Sky Crane from a distance, but his white defensive halo remained unmoving, as steady as Mount Tai. Only rank 3 Gu masters could remain useful for any length of time in this battle of attrition. The confidence of many began to waver. Hesitation appeared on their faces. The two sides remained locked in stalemate. Lord Sky Crane bared his teeth in a low laugh. I am certain to win. Every one of you will die. The difference between rank 3 and rank 5 was simply too vast. Rank 4 Gu masters might have been able to influence the situation, but the 3 rank 4 clan leaders had already been killed by Lord Sky Crane. First Gen Gu Yue's entire body was bound in iron chains. The white eyebrows still wrapped around him, and the yellow extraction talisman trembled on his forehead. Inside his aperture, his primeval essence had become dangerously thin. Suddenly, the talisman on his forehead released a faint golden light. A cluster of golden radiance emerged from First Gen Gu Yue's aperture. It was larger than a fist, yet smaller than a wash basin. The light floated gently to the ground and dimmed. When the radiance faded, the true form of a Gu worm was revealed. It looked like a crystal skull small enough to fit in one hand, shaped like the skull of a child. The bone was transparent like crystal, covered in delicate pale red blood patterns. The Blood Skull Gu! The instant Lord Sky Crane saw it, tears of joy almost sprang from his eyes. After several hundred years, I finally see you again. His expression shook with excitement. First Gen Gu Yue clenched his bloody jaws so hard his fangs clicked, yet he could not move or struggle free. Then another cluster of golden light was extracted from his aperture and dropped onto the ground. It transformed into a sphere of interwoven black and white radiance. Inside the sphere, 2 strange Gu worms revolved around each other, endlessly chasing one another. As they moved, the sphere itself rotated, threads of light leaking outward and drawing countless curious gazes. What Gu is that? Bai Ning and the others wondered. Another rank 4. Fang Yuan's gaze turned solemn. Yin Lord Sky Crane suddenly shouted. Shock appeared plainly on his face. Then, after a brief stunned pause, he threw his head back and laughed. Senior brother, you truly went to great lengths to find such an excellent Gu. Ha ha ha, you even planned to turn back into a living human? What a pity, what a terrible pity. In the end, I ruined it all. First Gen Gu Yue became frantic. He struggled wildly and roared again and again, completely losing his composure. Whether it was the Blood Skull Gu or the Yin Yang Rotation Gu, both had been part of plans he had spent nearly 1,000 years preparing. Now both had been sealed and extracted from his body. All that painstaking effort seemed about to turn to nothing. Lord Sky Crane laughed with unrestrained satisfaction. Seeing his senior brother reduced to such a state gave him the full taste of revenge. Then another golden light emerged. It landed on the ground and revealed a scarlet Gu, translucent like a watery shadow. The instant First Gen Gu Yue saw it, his frantic movements suddenly stopped. His bloody mouth opened, fangs exposed. Quick! Come here and destroy that Gu worm! Several Gu masters immediately rushed forward and attacked. The Gu had already been sealed by the extraction talisman. First Gen Gu Yue could no longer communicate with it through thought or activate it. A layer of golden sealing light covered its surface. Normally, only Tizhualeng or a special unsealing method could remove such a seal. But this particular Gu was a consumable Gu, inherently different from ordinary Gu worms. To activate it, the Gu itself had to be crushed. The Gu masters attacked. The golden light was only meant to seal the Gu worm, not protect it. After several strikes, the force shattered the sealing layer and destroyed the Gu's body at the same time. Whoom! A low hum rang out. Blood-red light blossomed. It expanded in an instant, forming a circular barrier around them. First Gen Gu Yue stood inside the barrier. Lord Sky Crane was outside. The protective sphere stretched roughly 6 meters across. Bai Ning and Fang Yuan were both enclosed within it, while Zhongzhao Man had been left outside. Most encouraging of all, the barrier had cut the long white brows in half. The severed strands disintegrated, and Fang Yuan's group suddenly regained their freedom. This aura is rank 5. Why does it feel so similar to Water Curtain Skyflower Gu? Fang Yuan wondered. He had never seen this Gu before. Lord Sky Crane, blocked by the barrier, staggered upright and sneered repeatedly. Senior brother, you truly have some methods. Even in this state, you still managed to counterattack and force me to release raise eyebrows and exhale Gu. What a pity. Do you really think this defensive shell can stop me? You're only prolonging your final breath. First Gen Gu Yue laughed loudly. Junior brother, then why don't you come in and try? Gladly. Killing intent flashed through Lord Sky Crane's eyes. Countless flying cranes rushed forward. White light shot from his eyes at the same time, and dense volleys of arrow featherbirds rained against the barrier. Yet the blood-red sphere did not move. No matter how fierce the attack, it remained perfectly stable. Lord Sky Crane's expression grew grave. He stopped attacking. What Gu is this? First Gen Gu Yue threw his head back and laughed. Let me enlighten you. This is the Blood Curtain Skyflower Gu, a unique Gu I personally refined. Water Curtain Skyflower is only rank 4, yet it can resist the attacks of rank 5 Gu. Mine is rank 5, so naturally its defense is even stronger. Water Curtain Skyflower does not allow even its owner to enter or leave. But my Blood Curtain Skyflower can be exited from the inside, though no one may enter from outside. Junior brother, take your time. Hit it harder if you like. Once I recover, I'll come out and harvest that dog head of yours. Ha ha ha! Shameless boasting! Lord Sky Crane was so furious that he breathed heavily. Victory had been completely within his grasp, yet First Gen Gu Yue had overturned the situation and forced the battle back into a stalemate. He attacked the barrier madly, every strike carrying terrifying force. The Gu masters caught outside the blood barrier, including Zhang Jiaoman, were killed in the chaos. But inside Blood Curtain Skyflower, the atmosphere was completely calm. The blood barrier stood as firm as Mount Tai. Gradually, the remaining Gu masters relaxed. First Gen Ancestor truly is an unparalleled hero. We're finally saved. Once First Gen Ancestor recovers and shows his divine might, that old man is finished. So this is the power of a rank 5 Gu master? To think I could survive something like this! The survivors cheered loudly. Bai Ning alone gave a cold snort. In his eyes, the outcome had become too predictable. This stalemate had lost much of its excitement, leaving him somewhat disappointed. Lord Sky Crane continued attacking for a long time without achieving anything. At last, he abruptly stopped and forced himself to calm down. First Gen Gu Yue's earlier words had clearly been meant to provoke him, tempting him to keep wasting primeval essence against Blood Curtain Skyflower. And just as expected, this Blood Curtain Skyflower Gu shared the same fundamental nature as Water Curtain Skyflower Gu. In other words, although the two Gu were different, their effects followed the same principle. The cost of refining such a Gu was enormous. It was a one-use defensive Gu with exceptionally powerful protection, but it also had a fixed time limit. Once that time was exhausted, the barrier would disappear on its own. Realizing this, Lord Sky Crane immediately took out 2 primeval stones. He held them in his palms, sat cross-legged, and began restoring his primeval essence. Help me! First Gen Gu Yue shouted. Only by helping me do you have any chance of surviving. Primeval stones. I need a large quantity of primeval stones. The surrounding Gu masters immediately brought out their primeval stones and piled them around him. First Gen Gu Yue opened his bloody mouth wide and inhaled deeply. The primeval stones were sucked into his mouth. Crunch, crunch. He bit through them directly. Large amounts of natural primeval essence poured into his aperture. Lord Sky Crane's expression changed. Stop giving him primeval stones, you fools. The moment he regains his freedom, he'll kill every one of you and use your blood to refine his aptitude. You're walking into your own graves. Such a crude attempt to sow discord. Aren't you afraid people will laugh their teeth out? Quickly, the old thief is telling us not to give them to First Gen Ancestor, so we should give even more. Everything depends on Lord First Gen. The Gu's masters generously contributed their primeval stones, and great quantities disappeared into First Gen Gu Yue's mouth. Fang Yuan and Bai Ning watched coldly from the side. An ordinary human body could never withstand such an enormous influx of primeval essence, but First Gen Gu Yue's blood-white body was far stronger and more durable. The level of primeval essence inside his aperture rose rapidly. At the same time, the power of demon suppression Iron Chain Gu weakened more and more. After some time, the iron chains finally dissolved into a pool of blood and disappeared completely. Freed from his restraints, First Gen Gu Yue released a long howl and activated his vital blood-white Gu. Vast amounts of foul blood from the ground were drawn toward him and poured into his body. In the blink of an eye, 2 powerful arms regrew from his shoulders, their fingers ending in blade-like claws. First Gen Gu Yue threw back his head and laughed as he rose to his feet. At that exact moment, the extraction talisman on his forehead also melted into a pool of blood and vanished. Heaven has not abandoned me. First Gen Gu Yue roared with laughter. Ancestor, please act. Kill that old thief. Lord First Gen will surely win the moment he makes his move. The crowd was overjoyed. First Gen Gu Yue's laughter slowly faded. Ghostly flames burned in his eye sockets. Of course I will kill my enemy, he said slowly. But before that, there is something else I must do. Not good. The moment Fang Yuan heard his tone, alarm rose in his heart. Without drawing attention to himself, he began shifting toward the edge of the barrier. The people beside him noticed nothing. Their fighting spirit was still surging. What does First Gen Ancestor require? If it is within our ability, we will devote everything we have to serving you. First Gen Gu Yue lifted his head and laughed. Ha ha ha, what I require is your lives. What? The crowd recoiled in horror. First Gen Gu Yue attacked without hesitation. Puff! His claw shot forward and pierced straight through the chest of a nearby rank 3 Gu master. When he withdrew his hand, a still-beating heart rested in his palm. The victim was a member of the Gu Yue clan. Disbelief remained frozen on his face. He released one final scream as blood sprayed outward, then collapsed backward. Good blood. It would be a waste to let it spill. First Gen Gu Yue laughed. With a thought, the blood skull Gu flew over and circled the corpse. The body trembled. Every drop of blood was drawn out by the blood skull Gu. A moment later, the corpse was left with empty eye sockets and dry, bloodless flesh. Having drunk its fill, the blood skull Gu's crystalline skull grew even more vivid, the scarlet veins within it becoming bright and beautiful.
First Gen Ancestor, you!
The crowd retreated in panic.
Someone too noisy!
First Gen Gu Yue's figure flickered. He appeared in front of the speaker and swept out a claw like a blade. The Gu Master's body was instantly cut in two. Fresh blood surged out, only to be devoured by the blood skull Gu. First Gen, you heartless beast. Without our primeval stones, how could you have recovered enough strength to fight? He's no better than that old monster. Everyone, attack together. Kill him! That's right, there are so many of us. Erg! A bloody massacre began. First Gen Gu Yue was a rank 5 peak stage Gu Master, and the primeval essence in his aperture had been completely restored. The people trapped inside were mostly rank 1 and rank 2 Gu Masters, with only a small number at rank 3. How could they possibly be his opponents? Worse still, Blood Curtain Skyflower sealed them away from the outside world, creating a closed space. Only First Gen Gu Yue, as the owner of the Gu, could leave freely. However, once he exited, he would not be able to come back in unless he destroyed the barrier himself or waited for its time limit to expire. The Gu Masters could neither flee nor fight. They were quickly routed. First Gen Gu Yue slaughtered them one after another, yet he deliberately spared the Gu Masters of Bai Clan and Xiong Clan. He killed only his own Gu Yue descendants, using the Blood Skull Gu to drain every drop of their blood. After several hundred deaths, the rank 4 Blood Skull Gu became brilliantly scarlet, saturated to its limit. First Gen Gu Yue laughed and summoned the Blood Skull Gu before him. The day I have planned for hundreds of years. This moment has finally arrived. His voice trembled with joy. The Blood Skull Gu opened its tightly shut jaws. A fountain of blood sprayed out. Strangely, the blood carried no stench. Instead, it released a refreshing fragrance that seemed to clear the mind. The blood fountain poured over First Gen Gu Yue from head to toe. Not a single drop fell to the ground. Every drop clung to the surface of his body, then slowly seeped through his flesh and traveled inward until it reached his aperture. First Gen Gu Yue stood motionless, savoring the sensation. Then wild laughter suddenly exploded from him. Keke! My aptitude has increased. It really has increased. The surviving Gu Masters were shaken to the core. Outside the blood barrier, Lord Sky Crane pointed at First Gen Gu Yue and roared furiously. Give me the Blood Skull Gu. First Gen Gu Yue laughed in delight. Then the laughter abruptly stopped. He turned his head toward Lord Sky Crane, hatred overflowing from his voice. Junior brother, you never imagined this day would come, did you? We were both orphans. Master adopted both of us. Yet from childhood until now, Master always favored you. Why? Wasn't it simply because you had A-grade aptitude while I had only C-grade? You possessed A-grade aptitude, so naturally your cultivation advanced rapidly. Do you know how much sweat and effort someone like me with only C-grade aptitude had to spend merely to keep up with your footsteps? We were called the twin cranes of the righteous path, yet from beginning to end you were the main figure while I was only the lesser one. You were the dazzling genius. All because you had a grade aptitude. You were lucky. You obtained Blood Sea Ancestor's true inheritance. You received the Blood Skull Gu, which could kill blood relatives, extract a blood essence fountain, pour it into the aperture, and increase aptitude. Do you know how I felt at that time? The Blood Skull Gu was my only hope. I thought about it day and night. I lay awake longing for it. With it, I could change my life. I could change my fate. But it belonged to me, mine. Lord Sky Crane stamped his foot and shouted, yes, yours. It was yours. First Gen Gu Yue nodded slowly. Your aptitude was good. Your luck was good. We clearly began from the same place, yet heaven only favored you. Only you received the true inheritance. Do you know what happened when I saw your smug expression and listened to you talk about your glorious future? I was smiling along with you, and suddenly I understood. Heaven favored you. It gave you A-grade aptitude. It gave you Blood Sea's true inheritance. What was I supposed to do? I was only someone with C-grade aptitude. If I relied on myself alone, how could I ever succeed? I could only rob. I could only seize. I could only take what wasn't mine and make it mine. Heaven had arranged my fate so that I would always lie beneath others, always remain a shadow behind someone else's back. I refused to accept it. Why me? Why should I be below while you stand above? At this point, First Gen Gu Yue suddenly began to cry like a child. The Blood White's body was hideous and terrifying. Hearing a child's sobs coming from such a corpse-like monster sent chills deep into the bones of everyone present. If Heaven would not cherish me, if Master would not care about me, if the people around me would never think highly of me, then I could only cherish myself. I could only value myself. I could only rely on myself. I could only work harder. I could only take greater risks. I could only fight with everything I had. Only then could I ever achieve anything. But the righteous path speaks of proper order. It speaks of morality, loyalty, background, seniority, and relationships. For an insignificant nobody like me, with no background, no talent, and no resources, tell me what could I possibly use to succeed? In the righteous path, I could only be exploited and bullied while looking up at noble young masters and heaven-blessed geniuses. I could endure until I grew old and still accomplish almost nothing. This is the righteous path? What kind of damned righteous path is that? Only by becoming demonic could I throw away sentimental ties, cast aside the rules of society, pay the price, and walk another road, a road that belonged to me alone, a road covered in thorns. That is why I ambushed you. That is why I stole your true inheritance. That is why I became a demon. Ha ha ha! Then let me be a demon! Let me be a demon! Let me be a demon! The words echoed again and again within the blood barrier. Outside the barrier, Lord Sky Crane fell silent. First Gen Gu Yue stopped laughing and returned to his work. More Gu masters were slaughtered. Their blood was absorbed by the Blood Skull Gu, condensed into blood essence, then poured into First Gen Gu Yue's aperture to improve his aptitude. The higher his aptitude became, the more primeval essence his aperture could store. The more Gu Yue clansmen First Gen Gu Yue killed, the higher his aptitude rose. After absorbing primeval stones, his aperture contained more and more primeval essence, and his battle strength climbed along with it. Outside Blood Curtain Skyflower, Lord Sky Crane burned with impatience, but the barrier stood before him like an uncrossable chasm. He could only watch helplessly, unable to stop what was happening within. Finally, only a handful of people remained alive inside. Brat, you're the one who stole the Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus, aren't you? First Gen Gu Yue walked toward Fang Yuan one step at a time, his dense killing intent locked onto the youth. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself. Hand it over obediently, and I will spare your life. Fang Yuan knew his chances of survival were already extremely slim, yet his expression did not change. He sneered. Your nonsense sounds like the shouting of a 3-year-old child. Take another step and I'll destroy the Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus. You know it has already been refined by me. With a single thought, I can destroy it. Choose carefully. First Gen Gu Yue's steps slowed, but only for an instant. Then he continued walking toward Fang Yuan with firm, measured steps. Brat, you have courage. You're intelligent too. Yes, you are my descendant. I need your blood to raise my aptitude, so of course I never intended to let you go. What a pity. Back then, I used bloodline seed goo to refine and strengthen my bloodline, hoping that among my descendants, someone with the ancient moon desolate yin physique would be born. If such a genius had appeared, I could have used that person's blood to make my aptitude soar directly to 99% a grade. If that were all, perhaps I could have spared the rest of you. Unfortunately, your luck is poor. Heh. What I hate most is being threatened. If I must abandon the Heavenly Essence Treasure Lotus, so be it. Now die. Before the final word had even faded, the wings on First Gen Gu Yue's back trembled. His body moved like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he appeared directly in front of Fang Yuan. His right claw reached forward. Fang Yuan's pupils contracted. Every hair on his body stood on end as he desperately tried to dodge. But how could the attack of a rank 5 expert be so easily avoided? The ghostly claw was already about to close on him when, without warning, a hand made entirely of ice appeared between them. Boom! The impact shattered the icy hand. Cold air exploded outward in every direction. First Gen Gu Yue was forced back a single step. Bai Ning Bing? Fang Yuan turned toward the one who had intervened, genuine surprise flashing through his heart. Bai Ning Bing withdrew the stump of his arm. Frost spread from the wound, and in only a few breaths a new hand of ice condensed into place, restoring its original shape. But it was no longer flesh and blood. That meant the final calamity of his 10 extreme physique was now extremely close. I never imagined I would get such an exciting death. Bai Ning Bing sighed, then suddenly smiled. His deep blue eyes settled on Fang Yuan. It's a pity I won't get to see how this battle ends. Fang Yuan, you and I are the same kind of person. I'm definitely going to die. If you die too, that would be a real waste. I'll protect you, but on one condition. Although Bai Ning was only rank 3, he was already standing at the edge of death. As that end approached, his battle strength kept rising like a spring bursting from the earth. If there was anyone present who might still be able to contend with First Gen Gu Yue, it was Bai Ning. Oh, Fang Yuan's eyes flashed. What condition? Bai Ning spread both arms as though he wanted to embrace the entire world. His robe fluttered in the cold air, and his brows lifted slightly. Live for me. See all the wonders of this world in my place. For a moment, Fang Yuan was genuinely moved. This fellow, as Fang Yuan looked at Bai Ning, it was almost as though he were looking at his own younger self. To ordinary people, Bai Ning's words might have sounded absurd, even delirious. But Fang Yuan understood the meaning beneath them. Bai Ning was a peerless genius whose talent defied heaven, yet his lifespan was painfully short. He had found his road. He had found what he believed in. He did not fear death. He simply could not let go of this world. There was still longing in his heart, but with no other choice, he could only entrust that lingering attachment to Fang Yuan. Oh, so it really is the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique. First Gen Gu Yue bared his fangs in a grin. What a pity you are not one of my descendants. Otherwise, none of these people would have needed to die. But you think the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique alone is enough to stop me? How naive. The instant he finished speaking, First Gen Gu Yue vanished. He appeared in front of Bai Ning. Boom! The two collided. First Gen Gu Yue staggered back 2 steps. Bai Ning's entire head and half his upper body exploded apart. But only an instant later, crack, crack, cold air converged from every direction. Frost condensed. A head and upper body of ice rapidly formed again. Bai Ning returned to life before their eyes. What? First Gen Gu Yue was shocked. The 10 extreme physiques were extraordinarily rare. Even he had never personally fought one before. The two began fighting at close range. Bai Ning's cultivation was far lower, so naturally he remained at a severe disadvantage. Yet no matter what First Gen Gu Yue did, he could not kill him. At this moment, the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique was almost an immortal body. No matter how terrible the injury, Frost would immediately gather and rebuild Bai Ning into his original shape. The sight made First Gen Gu Yue both furious and wary. His attacks became more ferocious. Bai Ning gradually lost every trace of living color until he had become a person sculpted entirely from ice, capable of moving freely. Even a drifting snowflake could stretch into a thin, sharp strand of ice under his control. At last, the time came. Death descended. Bai Ning softly recited, a faint smile resting on his lips. The mortal world runs deep in countless hues, while distant horizons fade beyond the seas. Today this wandering heart returns to earth, still not as pure as moonlight over the lake. From that moment on, his expression seemed to freeze forever. A bitter wind suddenly rose. Mist flooded the battlefield. Crack! Crack! Vast quantities of frost spread outward from beneath Bai Ning's feet. It grew higher and higher, like a mountain range rising from the earth. Then an enormous glacier burst upward from underground. A white tide of ice, fast as a dragon and vast as a tsunami, surged toward First Gen Gu Yue. First Gen Gu Yue cried out in alarm and resisted with everything he had. His red hair froze stiff. The blood mist around his body evaporated into frozen crystals. Under his control, enormous numbers of blood drop goo and bladewing blood bats threw themselves against the glacier, desperately trying to slow it down. It was not enough. In the end, the glacier overwhelmed him. It sealed him inside, imprisoned him, and swallowed him whole. White ice rapidly filled blood-curtained skyflower. Only Fang Yuan was deliberately left with a tiny pocket of empty space, just large enough for him to survive. Crack. A faint sound rang out. Blood-curtained skyflower split beneath the pressure of the glacier. With the barrier broken, there was nothing left to contain the cold. Freezing energy erupted wildly in every direction. Frost condensed across the mountain in an instant, becoming an ever-expanding field of ice. Even blood-curtained skyflower cracked under it. This power. Lord Sky Crane did not dare confront the spreading ice directly. He hurriedly flew high into the sky. From above, he stared down in shock. The glacier continued expanding. It spread over the whole of Qing Mao Mountain, from the summit all the way to its base. In only moments, the mountain that had once been green, lush, and full of life became a frozen world of snow, ice, and cutting wind. The ice continued to rise. Fang Yuan watched it happen with his own eyes. This vast glacier became the monument to the fall of a young genius, carrying within it Bai Ning's unwillingness, regret, and helplessness before death. Not good. I have to leave immediately. Bai Ning's consciousness is weakening. It's disappearing. He can no longer control the glacier. Fang Yuan realized the empty space around him was shrinking continuously. Ice kept condensing, compressing the small area in which he could survive. He immediately activated the Chainsaw Golden Centipede and Blood Moon Gu, trying to break through the ice. But the frozen layer was far too thick, and the cold was overwhelmingly dense. Every inch he removed was replaced by 2 more inches of frost. Fang Yuan had been trapped in a true dead end. There seemed to be no way out. Then, at that exact moment, a red light suddenly appeared beneath the ice. At first, it was only a thin thread. Then it grew brighter and stronger, expanding into a crimson radiance that spread beneath the frozen ground. Ha ha ha! Wild laughter erupted. Blood-red light burst outward. First Gen Gu Yue smashed his way free of the ice. He looked miserable, but the madness on his face had only deepened. If that Northern Dark Ice Soul physique had reached rank 4, it might truly have destroyed me. What a pity. He was only rank 3 peak stage. His gaze then locked onto the ice surrounding Fang Yuan. If the Northern Dark Ice Soul physique couldn't kill you, then senior brother, let me finish the job for you. Lord Sky Crane's voice came from the distance. He was flying toward them atop the Ironbeak Crane King. Before returning, he and the Crane King had worked together to kill the Blood River Python. Now both descended on the frozen mountain, carrying the momentum of victory with them.